it's really important to find a place where you know that there's an opportunity to do more. And I don't mean from a job paying skill perspective, but if you're in a very operational role that does the same thing constantly, then you're not using your other skills to learn and grow.
Yeah.
And even though you might not get promoted at that organization, as long as you're provided opportunities to learn new things and try new things, then you're always better off because you're always growing and you can apply yourself to other jobs if you want to, whether it's inside or outside.
Mm-hmm. So it's not always about the job title.
Exactly. For me, because I've always been in this kind of project world, I've never really stopped growing, right? Every project is a new opportunity. Every client is a new opportunity. You're always learning at least one thing on those engagements. So for me, as long as there's opportunity to continuously grow and try new things and have an opportunity to learn, I think is really important.
Hi everyone, welcome to episode 4, part 1 of the Power of Why podcast. My name is Naomi Hiley, and today I am joined by my mentor, Liana Murray.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yes, to provide you some background, Liana completed her undergraduate degree at Carleton University here in Ottawa in commerce with a minor in math.
Yes.
And soon after, she moved to Toronto to work at IBM as a consultant.
Mm-hmm.
So she spent a few years there and then moved back to Ottawa and then started working at a medium-sized consulting firm.
Mm-hmm.
From here, spent some time there doing mostly change management type work.
Mm-hmm.
And then recently started at a Crown Corp in Ottawa, solely focusing on change management stuff, which is her area of expertise.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Yeah. So the first part, in part 1, we'll discuss mostly about career strategy and like what you look for in a role and how do you sort of strategize and plan the next steps of your career.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So to start, can you talk about the importance of being clear on your value proposition and what it is that you bring to the table?
Yeah, so value proposition, that's such a big thing to say, right? I mean, when somebody asks you what your value proposition is, for me, I usually instinctively think of my hard skills. I don't think of my other soft skills that I know tend to actually be more important sometimes in the workplace, depending on where you are or where you go. And value proposition to me is pure hard skills. So when somebody says, what do you bring to the table? And in the consulting world, why should I spend money on you? Mm-hmm. Why you, not somebody else? That's where the word value for me, I guess that's my math background saying, put the dollar value on it. Mm-hmm. So for me, when people start to think about their value proposition, they have to think about why should somebody hire you or pay for your services over somebody else?
Sure.
So when I'm thinking about it for myself, I think about the experience that I have. So it's obviously a big key indicator. When you're first starting out in your career, you tend to forget that every little project or every little element of your job all of a sudden starts to get useful in year 2, in year 3, in year 4, and you can say, well, my last project, I did this, right? And all of a sudden that experience starts to play into your value proposition. So your experience, what you did in school, what you do outside of school, and then some of these kind of big moving moments that you have that you can say, I led this initiative, or I was a part of this team that did this innovative thing that nobody's ever done before. Mm-hmm. So really drawing on those types of experience for me is what I would use as my value proposition.
And then another important part of that is, for one, being clear on it, but how do you communicate it in a way that people are able to understand? The
elevator pitch, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So first you always have to think about why they're asking you. If you're at a networking event and they ask you for your value proposition, they're probably trying to figure out if you're somebody that they want in their organization.
Right.
So if you're at that kind of situation, then for me, you need to focus on those things that are relevant to them. At the end of the day, people want to hear about it, but they only want to hear the relevant pieces. So before I started working consulting, I wanted to be a teacher. And I had all of this experience at daycares and tutoring and summer camps, and I was a TA and doing all of these things that was relevant to that career choice. And then when I switched gears, no longer were those things relevant. So if somebody said to me at a networking event, or if I was trying to connect with people at IBM, which was my first job, and they said, why should we hire you? I wouldn't be like, well, I used to work at a daycare and I'm really great at making snacks and calming down 4-year-olds, right? So I would make sure that the experience I drew on was relevant to what I was doing then. I'd draw on my experience as president of the Student Society, or mentoring other students, or running a new orientation program for the school. I would draw on those things that were more relevant to them versus everything in your plethora. And I think people forget that we can decide which elements of our history we can draw on. Yeah. Not everything's relevant to everybody.
So it's almost thinking about what the so what is from their perspective.
Exactly. Why are they asking you? They're not asking you to make small talk. They're asking you because they want to know if there's something in there that's relevant to them.
So let's move over to the more of the soft skills. When you work in consulting, so a lot of the work you do are with clients. So when you're entering into that space, what makes you different? The way you work with people, so more on the soft side. Yeah,
so I've been in like the service industry, I guess you would say, for a long time. So consulting, and now even though I'm part of an organization at a Crown Corp, I'm still in this kind of specialist advisory type role, and I have clients, even though it's all kind of internal. So I think what the value that I bring that's not on the hard skill side is my ability to communicate and my ability to listen. So those are the two things that people tend to take for granted. You actually hear a lot now that people want to know how you work versus what kind of work you can do, because the how is not as teachable as the what.
Sure.
I was just in a conversation in a meeting today where the organization is talking about lean and agile principles, and they're hiring 10 new roles, and I proposed to them to do group interviews, because you see more the how people interact with each other than just one-on-one case studies where they're giving you maybe the best answer, but how they got there is maybe more important than the answer itself. So for me, I really pride myself on my ability to communicate, and when I say communicate, I don't just mean talk. I mean, being able to sit down with somebody and find out what's really bothering them, or what is their issue that they need solved, and helping them through that issue. And then the ability to listen. A lot of people like to talk, but not a lot of people like to listen. And I find over my career, I've noticed that the more you listen to those that are more senior to you and give them an opportunity to really tell you how they're feeling or how they're thinking, the better you'll be prepared to help them.
So this skill of listening, I noticed that like in a lot of recent articles, that tends to come up a lot more on something that you need to focus on, something you need to develop. So how do you do that? Because I know when you said people love to talk, like I could see that,
absolutely
anywhere.
Yeah.
But in terms of listening more and asking sort of the right questions, where do you practice that?
That's a really good question. Where do you practice that? Well,
you can practice it anywhere.
Yeah, you can practice it anywhere, but I mean, think about if you have an issue, or if you have a problem, or something that you want to get tackled, how frustrated you become when people jump to a solution, right? So that's kind of what I try to remind myself. I'm a very action-oriented person. I lead a very active lifestyle, and I like to get to the solution and get things done and be efficient. But sometimes going to that part of the process too early can hold somebody back. It can make them more reserved. They'll think you're not listening to them. So it's really important, if you're in a scenario where people are telling you about their points of view, showing you or showing you things on their their computers, or things like, look at this and take a look at that. It's important to go through that process, because they need to feel heard before, even if you had the solution 25 minutes ago, they won't be ready to hear it yet. They really need to feel like you've listened to all they have to offer before you can really provide any sort of action or solution.
Interesting. So you've jumped between, you spent some time in the private sector, moved over to more of a Crown organization.
Yes.
What are the 3 things that you look for in a role and in an organization?
So the 3 things that I look for, so I have jumped around a lot, and when you're in consulting, you jump from project to project as well, and sometimes you have a choice on those projects, and sometimes you don't. But the number one thing for me is the people that you work with. So I am a firm believer that people leave people, not organizations or projects. If you don't like the people you work with or the person that your leader, so to speak, you're generally quicker to leave. If you love the people that you work with but don't like the work, you'll likely stay a little longer. The leaving the people tends to be a shorter string. So for me, I tend to follow people that I enjoy working with, and that's a very big contributor to decisions I've made in my career, for sure. When I left my last place of work and moved to my current place of work, that was a big driver for me. The new boss I was about to have was a wonderful and fantastic motivator and a fantastic mentor. So I thought I need to work for this person. I can't not work for this person. So that one's probably number 1 for sure. Number 2 would be growth opportunity. It's really important to find a place where you know that there's an opportunity to do more. And I don't mean from a job paying skill perspective, but if you're in a very operational role that does the same thing constantly, then you're not using your other skills to learn and grow.
Yeah.
And even though you might not get promoted at that organization, as long as you're provided opportunities to learn new things and try new things, then you're always better off because you're always growing. And you can apply yourself to other jobs if you want to, whether it's inside or outside.
So it's not always about the job title.
Exactly. For me, because I've always been in this kind of project world, I've never really stopped growing, right? Every project is a new opportunity. Every client is a new opportunity. You're always learning at least one thing on those engagements. So for me, as long as there's opportunity to continuously grow and try new things and have an opportunity to learn, I think is really important. And then the third thing for me personally was really focused on specific skill sets I wanted to do. So when I moved from job 1 to job 2, I wanted to be more independent, be given more responsibility and lead my own projects. So I left a big, giant private company and I moved to a smaller, medium-sized company where I was very quickly leading my own projects, running with my own clients, and not having to worry about 12 partners reviewing documents. It was very much me and maybe one senior manager, and I was running the show. So that was a very huge learning curve.
Yeah.
First few months were very tough, but that was one of the things that I wanted to challenge myself with, and it was really important to me at the time. And then when I moved to where I was going next, my focus was on change management. And I love, one of my passions is talking about change and culture and helping people through change. And although I was doing it at my last place of work, it wasn't the prime focus. So I said, well, if I do find another opportunity, that means the prime focus has to be change management. And that's what I want to grow, and that's where I want to foster and become a specialist. So therefore, that's where I need to go. So it really depends on where you are on that journey to figure out in that moment, where is it that you want to focus? And that should be a really important driver for you. It can't always be the money. And it can't always be the people. It has to kind of satisfy. You can't let something falter or something. You can't compromise what you want to do all of the time. And a lot of people tend to compromise. And you end up screwing yourself over in the end when you do that. So those, I would say, are the 3 biggest things for me.
You always talk about passion and sort of doing the work that you love.
Yes.
You're there for 8 hours a day.
Yes, yeah. And sometimes more.
Yeah. Especially in consulting.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's, I think, tough for some people to sort of accept, right? But it also depends on what motivates you to keep going, whether it's the money or the status of the organization that you're working for, or the status of the job title. But staying true to what it is that you want to be working on, I think, is incredible. It's powerful.
Yeah, and I think there's only so far money and power can take you. If you don't truly like the type of work that you're doing, eventually that fire will run out, and opportunity will tend to outweigh financial dollars at some point. In some point in your career, it tends to, for sure.
What would you say was the best piece of career advice that you received, especially at the start of your career? Recent grad.
I would say one of the best pieces of advice I got very early on was about personal brand. So this concept that you can only make a first impression once, and depending on how you behave, or your work ethic, or your value system, and when I say value systems, I mean things like showing up early or showing up late, or those types of things that are kind of ingrained in you, really can affect your personal brand, and your attitude and reaction to things can affect your brand and how quickly people will or will not want to work with you. And when you're in consulting, it's very much as people don't often talk about it, it's very much, if I do a really great job on this one project and this manager really likes me, maybe they'll take them along with me on their next project. So you don't always end up in this pool and like you're next in line. It's very much a networking kind of business.
Even within the
organization. So you're constantly selling yourself. And if you behave against a brand that you feel isn't representing, so if I'm a manager and there's somebody's brand that's not really jiving with mine, I'm going to remember that. And I might not pick them to be on my next project, kind of thing.
And those things are feelings.
Yes. They're not often, there's sometimes it's hard things, like, well, they're not really great with Excel and I need somebody good with Excel.
Yeah.
But most of the times it's soft skills. It's their ability to behave in front of a client, or their ability to react, or just general things that you can't really control. Coaching can help them. If people want to be coached, and everybody wants to be coached, right? So those are the things that when I started, I thought about it, and I thought about personal brand, and I tried to figure out what I wanted my brand to be, and then I've been working towards that ever since.
And currently, you have a brand manager.
Yes, I do.
Made up that term, but at work.
Yeah, I do. I have a brand manager.
What does that mean?
She's so it's somebody who I asked, who I trust. It's not somebody else, just anybody. So somebody that I trust, who I work very closely with. Yeah. And I sat down with her and I said, hey, this is what I want my brand to be. And when I asked her to be my brand manager, she was very, taken back. She's like, wow, that's a very big responsibility to do. Yeah. And she came back to me and said, well, what do you want your brand to be? And I had to sit down and really think about that. So I thought of, the 3 or 4 prongs of what I wanted my brand to be, and she just kind of knows that. So if she sees something, or if I'm in a meeting or running a workshop or something, and I feel that maybe, that didn't really go with the brand that I'm trying to portray, she'll be able to really talk it out with me and say, no, I think that was fine, or you might want to consider next time doing it this way, if that's the kind of brand you're trying to portray. And I'm not saying that you can't be a true, genuine person. That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm just an advocate of constantly learning from your experiences and constantly being, a better you, for lack of sounding really corny. So for me, if that's the type of brand I want to portray in the world, that's also the type of person I want to be. Yeah. So if somebody can help me be like, hey, I can tell you're a little tired or a little pissed, so maybe you should take a breath before you go to that next meeting, because I know that you want to have that brand of being more reserved, or whatnot, or being more patient, or open to new ideas, and you might want to take a breath. So it's always kind of nice to have somebody around that knows what your brand is expecting, that you're trying to put out there, and then they can kind of reassure you that yes,
you're on track.
You're fine. You're fine. Yeah. So
because oftentimes there are things that we do that we're not necessarily aware of, but if you have someone at work who can keep you accountable or can see it objectively, it's a great person to have, I think.
Yeah. One of the things I struggled with for a long time, I tend to be a curious person. I don't know where that comes from, if it comes from my math side or my non-math side, but I tend to be curious. So if there's something that I don't know or haven't learned about, I'll probably want to learn about it. Yeah. But that also tends to kind of slip into, if I find somebody new at work, or somebody told me that they were busy on the weekend, I'll naturally be like, oh, what were you doing? And then sometimes I'm like, this is none of my business, you know. So it's kind of just things like that where you need to. I had a friend that I'd say to them, you know, if I'm being a bit nosy, I'm not trying to be. Sometimes I don't realize that I'm just curious. So it's always good to just kind of keep in mind and be self-aware. And if you can get somebody else to also hold you accountable, it helps, because sometimes we can't see it.
So what were the sort of experiences that got you to that place? What, in terms of whether that's in university or when you took your first job and sort of moved to a new city, currently, what past experiences do you find yourself often drawing from?
I find that, you know, moving to a new city, starting 3 new jobs, or starting at new projects all of the time, you start to pick up on things that people do well and do not so well, right? So what I mean by that is if I'm working with a manager and I do not like their style, I'll work with it. I'll make sure it works for me, and we'll figure out a way to make it work. But I'm taking a mental note that I don't love that this manager is particularly micromanaging, or that they're too aloof or something. So I can put that in my little register and say, okay, well, when I'm in this position and I have to do this, then I know that I need to be self-aware of it and maybe check in. The first time I was a manager, actually, I was very nervous to be a manager, because I thought, you know, I have a big responsibility here and I really can help shape this person's career if, you know, given the opportunity. And I sat down with them and I told them I'm a new manager, so I might not be very good at it. So keep me in check. If there's something that you need that I'm not doing, you need to tell me. And this way I can advocate for you and what you need, and in this way I'm also learning from based on what you need, that I can be a better boss. So it's just kind of keeping, again, that lines of communication open and just always learning from all of the experiences you're getting.
Interesting. Thank you very much. Thanks for sitting down with us. To talk about career strategy. And part 2 we'll be discussing sort of the relationship and mentorship side of things.
Sounds good.
So stay tuned.